of this webinar, so you can go back if you miss anything. And then lastly, since there is a lot of us on here, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat box. We'll be monitoring that. It might be where we answer it as we go along, or it might be where we answer it at the end of the webinar. So just put them in there if you can. Like I said, I do have you all on mute, mainly just so we don't have any feedback. So to kind of kick us off, I'm just going to quickly cover, again, our main purpose of this is to let you know if you are eligible to apply. So as you can see, you need to be a farmer or producer with a commodity already in production. You can't be thinking about it and get the grant to do it. You have to be in production already. You must be producing the majority of the commodity. So for example, you can't go buy 100% of the product from someone else and then you do the value added process. So you actually have to be producing it. Again, as it says in the title, it's only for value added projects. You cannot buy a truck, you cannot buy a tractor, you cannot pay for constructions. That's the main thing people always think. You cannot cover production costs, it's processing costs. As you can see, you do have to have a match. Jim and Jessica will talk in more detail about that. And as I've already said several times, it's not a simple grant. We don't want to intimidate you, but there's a lot of work that goes into it. You know, there's a lot of documentation you have to have. And we're here to help you know what you need. But you know, don't just think you can sit down in a day and complete this. So it does take a lot of work, but again, we're here to help y'all with that. So with that, I will turn it over to, I think, Jessica, you're next, right?
I think that's Jim.
Jim, sorry.
Jim, you're on mute.
There we go. There we go. I was going to dive in and start just talking about what the program is and what it would fund. So you can get up to $75,000 towards a planning project and something that you're trying to figure out how to do doesn't make sense within there. And then up to $250,000 of federal funding for working capital projects. And remember, this is a matching grant. So in order to get, for example, $250,000 of federal fund, you have to be able to match it with $250,000 of your own funding. So the whole project cost would be $500,000. So, and that can be for the working capital over a 3-year period. For planning projects, they like to see that spent in the 1-year period. You're competing on this grant nationwide. So the more they get from South Carolina, it doesn't matter. It's, you know, it's a national pool. You know, you're looking at funding probably about 250 or so grants nationwide. That's just a rough level out there. And there's a little bit around $33 million in the pool. And again, right now the application due date is March 22nd for it. So that means all the paperwork has to be in electronically and that by that period of time. So here in South Carolina. Here we go. Oops, went too far. So the grant, we talked about the 2 types of grants, and just to hit them real fast, they're the 2 categories that divide into, and for USDA, they take a very strong line between these. You're either doing planning or working capital within there. So planning, what most of the money is going to be going to is working for typically outside experts and other things, trying to get to see if the project makes sense within there. So, you know, would I like to open a creamery? Type of thing, or I would like to do local meat sales. Does that, can I do it? So they will pay for the business plan, feasibility study, market planning, research planning, market development. You can work on anything on there, but everything on that type of grant has to be things that you're not yet doing. So trying to figure out, does it make sense? And typically you're looking for the money. Most of that money would be going through to pay somebody else to help with it. Now we're talking about match later and where that comes from. But then on the working capital side is you're up, the business is running, you're looking at expanding it, looking at new customers. And so what are the pieces that go for that? So some of the ideas are, processing, salary, what it takes to run the thing. And again, all those have to be non-farming expenses. So if you're, It can't be what you're already undergoing. You can't buy seed. You can't buy that. In fact, here's sort of a list that always comes up on it. Kyle's already hit it, but it's always the first thing that people ask for is you can't, you can't buy any trucks. You can't buy any tractors. You can't pay for a building. So no equipment under this. We can go into some of the details with that, but so you can't pay for equipment. A lot of people, I know that's the first thing that you're looking for on it. And so it's like, well, where's that coming from? And this grant, it won't cover that. It's just covering the value added activities, so everything has to be going towards that value added side. And what we ask about is what it can pay for. Typically it's on the, what would be normal things if you were selling things as a commodity. For example, if you were going to be selling, grain, typically it would come into your, your silos or whatnot, and then you'd unload it and take it to the, the train station or wherever you're selling your grain to. If you're going to set up a distillery to turn it into whiskey, it would be post that time of when you load out the grain, as if you were going to take it to the market at the same time. Same thing if you're taking cattle, that dividing line is kind of, when you take the cow to the slaughter facility, once you put a knife in it, everything from that time of when you're putting the knife in it onward could be sort of the area where you could count for the value added, but you can't do anything prior to that on there. So you can't, it's a conflict of interest to pay for any family labor directly. Now you can use family labor as match, and we'll talk a little bit of that more, but anybody you're directly related to can't be paid for it. You also can't use your salary paid to yourself. So you can't, say, hey, this is a great grant, I'm going to write myself a salary for it. So you can't do that. And again, to hit it, nothing involving the farm side. So no planning, no planting, all that. And why I hit that so hard is that one comes up time and time again within there. And if you happen to own a, if your family member happens to own the, a business with it, you can't pay yourself. So if you happen to be a farmer and own a marketing firm, you can't pay yourself to do the marketing on it. So none of that can go back. Those are all conflicts of interest on the grant side. So kind of, now let's talk about what you can do with it. So hopefully we're done with the negative areas, but you pay for your marketing fees, processing, any supplies, any of the, PPE equipment that you might need to be able to work with this, any labor that's not family labor. So if you're hiring labor to work with you in a processing facility or to work at a store or to drive a truck to take your product to market, that can do, any of the marketing, any of the packaging is often a major things, or supplies, bottling. If you're doing online sales, you can pay for your credit card fees, for example. So any of those areas are sort of the areas you can come into, and those are what you count against on that level of it. So, to be eligible for the grant, I know we're hitting this stuff really fast, but there's a lot of details on it, but you must already be in production of that commodity you're making. So it's not just good enough to be a farmer, with it. You have to have made that product and sold that product you already want to use for the value added program, right? You have to be involved in the day-to-day labor management and operations of the farm. So they can't be an absentee landowner. It can't be something where you're just paying for somebody else to, consult and, contract the work for you. So you have to be the one involved with it. In fact, on the application, you actually have to sign a box that says exactly for that. And you have to control it all the way through the production time and to wherever you're doing that value added sale for. So that could be through the wholesaler or through the retailers on that level. And then of course you have to, it's federal. So anything you do, you have to provide proof of it. So you got to show that you're the one, usually through tax records and other things, that you have the ownership and that you're eligible for this from farms and taxes on it. So to be that person, there's a couple of different groups. I'm going to hit this one fairly fast. Most folks that are probably on here are going to be independent producers. And that doesn't matter whether you are an LLC, an S Corp, a small proprietorship. That ownership doesn't matter. That would still be an independent producer. A group with that, for nonprofit producers, board members, independent producers. So you could be that with a producer group within there, you could be a co-op sitting there that's legally organized as a co-op. And then there is a category that has 10% of the funding is available for what they call a majority controlled producer-based business. So that's if you have some outside investors or you have some off-farm, folks that are involved on it, they go into that. You still have to have the majority of that being owned by the producer. So if you have some outside investors in it, as long as the farmer has it, and that's a smaller category, that group is only eligible for 10% of the funding. But like I said, most people end up in that independent producer category. Okay, we talked about who you are to be eligible, then the type of product that has to be eligible and what you have to do. And this is really where it says product, really what it is USDA's definition of what value added is. So for something to qualify as value added, is showing what it is. So the first thing you have to do is it has to have a change in state. And by that means it goes into something that can't be changed back. Turning fruit into wine, milk into butter are the most standard ones. Putting vegetables into a package does not count. Because again, you could take them back out of the package and they'd still be vegetables. So frozen does count under it. It took a number of years for that to be accepted. And then the other way that you can count is, and you only have to meet one of these categories. So once you meet one of them, you're good enough. So you sort of can pick the one that's best, locally produced agricultural and food products. And that's something that is sold within 400 miles of where you live. And just before we got on here today, I looked, and 400 miles from here gets you all the way up to Richmond, Virginia, and basically all the way down to almost Orlando, Florida. So their definition of local gets you in a pretty far market. I didn't look up how far west, but you can do that and the map yourself on Google with that. But if you were running for Columbia, so it's a pretty far range. And so a lot of the folks that are doing food products, that's directly where they drop into, Now, produce in a manner that enhances value, just read that to say organic. If you're doing certified organic production and it has to be certified, you can't just say we're using organic methods, then that you qualify for that level. So there's a few other things, but in most cases, that's what the number 3 one. There's 2 other ways that people do, but they really don't happen very often. I'll mention them real quick and move on. Physical segregation. If you're doing something from GMO corn or like that, where you're tracking that it's physically separated from everything else and can't be mixed and goes through certain quality stuff all the way from beginning to end, you can try with that one. If you're looking at that, maybe do a follow-up and we can chat about it. And then farm-based renewable energy, if you're doing something that's going into biofuels for biodigesters or that, those will count. In South Carolina, that's been a less used area. Some of the folks in the Midwest have been a bigger place with that one. How you qualify for it. And like I say, I know we're throwing a lot at you real fast, but there's a couple of different types of applications you can do when you're qualifying. One of the most common ones typically is what's called an emerging market. So you're doing a new product or new geographic or demographic market. So basically, you've been making this product for less than 2 years, and you're going to be selling it to some new customers with there. So for some of the groups, particularly for the ag co-ops and majority controlled groups, if you're applying under those groups, you have to fit into this emerging market category. So if you're not an independent producer, you really have to be looking at a product that you're doing for less than 2 years. So the idea is develop something new. So, and for those, you're going to need for the working capital application, a feasibility study and a business plan. And we're going to talk more about the feasibility study and business plan a little bit later. Okay. The market expansion, again, for independent producers, is just saying that it doesn't have to be a brand new product. You could have been doing the product for longer than 2 years, but you have to be selling it to new customers. So if you've been running a farm stand where you're selling vegetables at and you want to ship it to a new market, you want to ship it from Florence to Columbia to sell downtown Columbia, that would be a market expansion. So you're going to be looking at new customers. Typically with that one, you're still going to need a market plan. So, but you're going to have to show new customers, and at the end of the day, the whole goal of this grant is to increase your revenues. So if you're selling new things to new customers and getting lower revenues, you're really probably in the wrong business. But the idea is to increase revenues and to do that with it. So, and you're going to show that through the numbers that are coming out in your business plan. So if we get this money and expand, we're increase our revenues, we're getting new customers within that. Now there is an exception that doesn't require a business plan, and it can be a good one if you're going for less than $50,000. You don't need a business plan, marketing plan, or feasibility study. Now, the reviewers can still grade you. It's always good to have one because the reviewers can look and compare you to people that have business plans. But if you're less than that, you don't need to go out and put a business plan together. You still kind of need a lot of the information that's required in the business plan to put together a good application. But you can do this simplified application. It is a good way to go. I would say, and on this grant, because it takes so long that you're looking at the grant taking, between 70 and 100 hours of work by the time you get together all the pieces you need and do the paperwork with it. This is not a grant that you want to go after if you're only going after like $5,000 to $10,000. It's not really worth your time. That you're going to end up spending more time and frustration on it. That's one you probably want to look for other funding sources that don't spend as much of your valuable time on it. But that would be one I would encourage with it. Okay, real fast, matching funds are always one that make people scratch their heads, but this is a matching grant. So as I mentioned before, the easy way to think about it is for every dollar that you spend, the federal government can match you for $1 of eligible activities. So it's 1-to-1, which is why if you go after the, $250,000, the whole project would be $500,000. So matching funds come into a lot of different ways within there. And if you're going after the planning grant, they have that same requirement. So planning grants can be up to $75,000. So the whole budget would be $150,000. Same with the simple project. So that's a $100,000 budget, which for me is not always such a simple project if you're looking at something just under 100,000. But where do they come from? They have two different levels. You can have cash matching, which is showing that you have the funds available before. And this is one of the areas in this grant that can be a problem for folks and often limits how much funding they have. You have to show that you have the ability to match before you do the application. So you get more points in the grant if you go after a cash match within there. Those would be showing that you have funds in a savings account, a checking account, a retirement account, anything that has your name or the farm names on it, or somebody else is willing to give you a loan to do that type of expansion. So a letter of credit with it. You can in this program, and this is one of the things that isn't allowable in a lot of federal programs, you can do half of your match or up to half of your match, which is 25% of the whole project cost, can be in kind match. So it's a nice thing you can do it. You lose a couple points on the application, but again, it can be a really nice way to expand the level of the grant. So it's a little bit of a trade-off that you give up a few points, but you can expand more. And that in-kind match can be your time that you put towards the project, at a value where you're doing it. You can also do inventory. So if you've got a dairy where you have, product there, or a winery, something where you're keeping that, or if you have third-party people that are willing to say, hey, they're going to help you. So if you're working with, somebody like an extension agent or something like that that's willing to help and show their time that they're willing to commit to help you bring this project forward. So we'll say matching funds is often a big area, and I would, often that's a level of that decides, how much you can match with it. But you have to show the matching funds before the grant goes in, and then once the grant's awarded. So there's two different times you have to be able to show that, within there. Now, you don't have to keep the money in that account once you show the funds. You just have to show you have the capacity to do it. So, what I say for people for their cash match, and you actually have to show it within 30 days of the grant application. So I always tell people, if you're using an account for a business that's running, print out the amount to show your matching amount and then pay your employees after you print it out. So you just have to be able to show that amount in it, but that's a way to show that you have that access to it. So, and again, if you provide all cash match, you get more points on it, but it's a good trade-off often depending on the size and level of your business that you're looking at. And now I'm going to be quiet and let Jessica chat a little bit about how, what goes into the actual grant itself.
Hey,
Yes.
Jim and Jessica, I figured this would be a good question to actually do right now. So we got a question. If you have two different products, but they're both produced under the same farm, do you have to have an application for each product? Or
No, you don't. You can combine the products in one application.
Okay. Sorry, Jessica, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You go ahead.
No, and I apologize if you hear a chorus of dogs in the background. I believe I have a delivery, so I do apologize for that. I'll try to talk over them. But yeah, so I'm just going to go through the basics of writing your application and the pieces that are required in that. Again, this is going to be a very general overview. So as you're going through the application, if you have specific questions about pieces that are in there, feel free to reach out to us or V or anybody on this webinar, and we can help you go through those. But just a quick overview of what is required. So right off the bat, you're going to need to apply for your DUNS SAM registration and also have your EIN. I'll explain those a little bit in a little bit. And then obviously your application, you'll need that. Any requested attachments, including letters of support, and as well as the federal forms that go with the application. And then, like Jim mentioned, your business plan or feasibility study will be required. So DUNS and SAM really quick, your DUNS number is obtained through dunnandbradstreet.com. You need to get that first before you apply for your SAM, and that's just required for any federal grant that you get. And then once you have that, you can go to sam.gov and apply for your SAM number there, maybe called a cage code on there. But you want to make sure that you are using sam.gov, not sam.com or any other variation of that website, because this process should be completely free. And some of those other sites might want to charge you or tell you that they can help you do it, but it can muddy things on the back end, especially when you're trying to renew it and all of that. So just make sure that you're doing sam.gov, and this process can take between an hour, 2 hours, but you should be able to complete it yourself. So when putting your application together, you really want to use the template that's provided by the USDA. They have one for the planning grant as well as the working capital grant, and they are different, so make sure that you're using the correct one, because the template's really going to lay out exactly what you need to have in there. It's going to have all of the exact statements that you need to have for eligibility, and it's going to tell you what you need. So as you go through it, you need to make sure that you're checking all the right boxes, filling in all the blanks, because you don't want your application to be thrown out on the back end after you put all that work in it, just because you forgot to select one box. When it does come to the writing portions of it, make sure to keep it focused on your specific project. So you may have a business that is dealing with multiple products, multiple ventures, whatever it is, but this application just needs to focus on whatever it is that you're asking for this one. So if it's one product, two products, whatever it is, keep it focused. And just make sure that it's listed out logically so that they can understand who you are, what you're trying to do, and what you need money for. And then you also reference any support documents that you have that are attached, like your letters of support or any industry information, because again, that just helps support the claims that you're making about your products or your business. So once you have all that written, you're going to want to edit it a lot, because if try to get someone involved who isn't as close to the project as you are, because you may understand it very clearly when you read it, but you want to make sure that someone who has no clue what your business is or what you're trying to do can understand it from how you've written it. So get someone else involved to just look over it for you, and also just check for formatting. There's no specific page length or anything for this program, but you don't want to have egregious errors in it or blank pages, things like that. So always make sure to check for those things. Now let's talk a little bit more about the supporting documents that you'll need. First off, you want to be able to provide documentation to prove your eligibility for the grant. So this can include your articles of organization or incorporation, a letter of good standing to show that you're still in good standing with the state, your tax forms to show farm income, and then any other documents that may be specific to your project, like lease agreements or organic certification, all of that. So this is just very important up front, that they need to be able to prove that you are eligible under the eligibility that you selected, as Jim discussed earlier, for those pieces. Additionally, you'll want to provide some research, usually anything that you've referenced to support your claims. Include those in the appendix of the application. So this could just be excerpts from those articles, clippings of the websites, anything like that. Also make sure to include your business plan or feasibility study if you need one, and attach your letters of support that you have. And so on letters of support, there's a few different types that you can have. Producer support is just, as it states, it's support from other producers who may be involved in the project, showing how they would benefit or contribute to the project. End user support are going to be your customers and your buyers. The strongest form of support that you can get would be in the form of commitment. And this would be either a letter of them stating, I'm going to buy a certain amount of product from you during the grant period. Could be a contract, a buyer agreement, whatever it is, just showing that they're committed to buying it. And then finally, third-party support. Those could be like community organizations or community members that show general support for it, but it may also include contractors or others who are providing services to the project that need to show that they're committed to it. Biggest thing to remember is to start early on these, because you don't want to be chasing them down when you're trying to submit your application in March. So get started early. And one thing that might help you is to provide templates to folks. So give people a general idea of what the letters need to include, because if you just go up to someone and say, I need a letter, you're going to get some mixed results. So try to provide some guidance for them through some templates. Also give them a due date for those letters. Again, you don't want to be chasing them down. And you can also use other forms of documentation for support, like magazine articles or customer comment cards, anything like that, that you can scan and attach, just again lends more support to your project. Then just really quick, other required forms. These are specifically listed in the application that you'll need to include them. These are in addition to your other attachments. You can download them directly from grants.gov or the USDA site, and you'll just need to make sure that you fill them all out and that they're attached to your application. And don't forget to sign them, because if they are not signed, then your application is not signed. So more details online about those. But I'm going to pass it over to John now with SCORE to just discuss a little bit about what needs to be included in a business plan.
Very good. Thank you, Jessica. I just wanted to, first of all, explain very briefly what SCORE is and how SCORE can help folks in small businesses and entrepreneurs who are just getting started. And I'm specifically a small business mentor and an agribusiness volunteer. So I'm a bit of a hybrid in the organization, but there are many others who can help folks provide similar services. SCORE is the all-volunteer arm of the Small Business Administration, SBA. And nationally, SCORE is a network of 10,000 volunteers with business experience. And we provide support and mentoring to entrepreneurs and small businesses just like each of you, or the one you're considering to be in the future. Our mentoring and business education opportunities and activities are provided at no cost to anyone. We bring business experience to the conversation, connections within the business community, and to resources that some small business owners may not be aware of. So we have an educational element to everything that we do. Planning, ING, is a very active word, and that's exactly where the emphasis needs to be. We've had several mentions today of a business plan, and that's what this is about. This is my pitch to you to how to go about making a business plan. But it remains a very active part of your application, and it applies in a much broader context than this value-added grant context alone. So basically, your business plan in the planning process connects your big picture, your idea and your thoughts and where you want to go, to necessary steps for success. And it does this in an organized way, in a way that others reading your business plan can relate to and readily understand. And this logical sequence that is reflected in your plan is somewhat universal with business plans. So there's not rocket science or new here. But what is new is the need to make sure that you own this. This is your document, and it has to reflect your business, your goals, your insights, to some extent your history, your business history, and where you expect to be going with the business in the future. So that's it in a nutshell. It will do a variety of things for you once you have it. So for example, if your business requires outside financing, a business plan is absolutely essential to begin the discussion with a lender, or in this case, a grant application. It becomes a bit of a set piece, but it is an extremely important set piece explaining what it is that you're about and what you hope to accomplish with your business and using the resources that you're asking for. It can also help to inform your employees and your partners. So a business plan is something that's written in plain English. It's understandable by anyone who reads it. And they in turn become educated and better informed about what it is that the business is about. And in the case of an employee, how it relates to their responsibility or their role inside of your business. If you're going to a banker, it's absolutely required. Any lender requires some form of a business plan to be submitted with your application for finances. And almost across the board, USDA and state ag programs require the same information, if not literally the entire business plan, as part of your grant requests. And so even if the business plan is not required as an addendum, if you will, the information that's in the business plan can be lifted out and purposefully put into the application that you're for the program that you're applying for. And you don't forget also that it's very useful for your supporting experts. So if your business is supported by a bookkeeper, by a tax preparer, occasionally by an attorney, your business plan is sometimes required in order for those folks to understand your business and apply their skill set to your advantage going forward. And lastly, I'd say that it guides the development of your business. It's a living document. As circumstances change, as the market shifts or new products are developed, your business plan needs to be adjusted. And that in turn leads you to an exploration of what it is I need to be successful going forward. And the very last thing I'll share with you is keep it short, focused. Generally, I hate to use numbers of pages, generally 6 to 12 pages, no longer. If it's longer than that, it's needed by a specific purpose. So for example, you may need a longer financial section for some purpose, but generally keeping it brief and focused and adapting it, make it that living document. That's what will be successful for you. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to hit really quick, in addition to the business plan, the feasibility study, if you're required to provide one, it does need to be conducted by an independent third party. It cannot be conducted by you, the business, or anything like that. And it's just has to provide an analysis of the operations and technical considerations of the project, as well as the financial feasibility. And it does need to be specific to the project that you're applying for under the grant. Alrighty, I think we're going to switch now to discussing the EPG scoring. So give me a second to pull that up for you. All right, is that coming up there?
Yeah, we see it, Jessica.
All right, cool. Jim's going to take us through this one pretty quickly, so just relinquish control.
There we go. I want to put on kind of my other hat as a reviewer, because when you look at the application template, most of it has to do with eligibility sections. And so you have to get through that. And actually, the sections that you actually, within the template that you write about for scoring is only page 18 to 21 of the application. See if I can quickly get that. Just got me you. There we go. So what the scoring section is, because if you don't score the points, you can't win the grant. So a lot of times people spend a lot of time on the application process. They see this huge document from USDA and they start working on the eligibility section and don't make it to where the points are. So I would encourage you, when you're looking at it, flip to that page 18 on the application and keep it clear. And what I say is on the scoring side, if it's not in the application, it can't be clear, it can't be scored. And if the viewer can't understand what you're saying, they can't give you the points. That's my simple thing about that. So do everything you can to make the reviewer's job easy, and also to make sure that it passes the BS test. You know, most of the reviewers on this have been grading a lot of these over a long period. They've been involved 20 to 30 years in this level with it. And so, you know, does it make sense? Does it pass the smell test? So those are the two things really when you're writing it up to say, you know, how do you compare one applicant to another? You know, does that applicant look like they've done their homework? So that's why referencing some of these outside studies or outside sources says, hey, it's not only my idea, but other people also think it makes sense. That's where those letters of support can really help you, not only from an eligibility standpoint, but it shows that people say, that's it. And it's always, you know, what are you doing that's unique and different? You know, what is the itch you're scratching, as my marketing professor would say, you know. So make sure that you're hitting that you don't get so wrapped up on the passion about what you're doing that you forget to say what it is and why this is a good project within that. You know. All the eligibility, all the point sections are in that 6.2 of the evaluation criteria, right? And I would say, make sure this application is very repetitive. It asks for different pieces of information several different times in the application. It is convoluted that way on it. But make sure that if they're asking for something in that narrative section or that point evaluation section, that you're answering in that section. You know, you don't want to tell the reviewer, hey, this is somewhere else. I don't want to answer it, because then they won't give you the points. So, you know, write about it in that section, even if you feel like you may have told something about that earlier in the eligibility, make sure you bring it out in that section. Also make it so people can't, you know, read. You don't want to set it up in, you know, 4.6 font so that nobody can see what you're saying. Make it, you know, big, clear, put some breaks in the pages, you know, use a couple bullet points to make the reviewer have the chance to do this. These are actually reviewed by one USDA reviewer, typically in the state, and then 2 other people who are not USDA employees, who are outside reviewers that are going to be outside of the state and they can't know anything about you. So, You're going to have people that are looking at it, like I say, and they're just people that are coming in. They're, being paid a small amount to review these. So whatever you can do to make it easy for them to give you the points, that's what you want to put when you're talking about your project. Here are sort of the 100 points of the review area within there. And as John said in his discussion about the business plan, a lot of these sections are sort of a deconstructed business plan. They're sort of put together in different levels, but who are you, the nature of the business, the qualifications, who's going to management, who those letters of support count for 10 points in there, your work plan, how are you going to spend the money and how does it make sense? Do you have a plan? What's happening with it? And then last are those 10 points for administrative points, which you may qualify for, you may not qualify for, depending upon the project area. If you're in a specific focus of where they are, they may do that. They also use that for a couple of states that don't have many awards, but South Carolina has been getting enough that they're not going to qualify that way. So there are a couple priority points, and I want to mention these because on these priority points, you can qualify, you qualify for one of these. So once you get one of them, you can stop. It doesn't matter really which one. So beginning farmer with less than 10 years experience, a veteran, socially disadvantaged, smaller, medium-sized farm that you have less sales at a certain level, which is often a $750,000 with that. So, but you only need to qualify for one of those to get the points. Once you've got it, you're okay. And then there are 10 points, which are these administrative points, which are set there, and the priorities have been, are you in a persistent poverty county, or what are your job creation numbers within there? Now, in order to qualify for those, this has to be the first time you've gone after a VAPG too. So, okay, real fast for scoring. The better story you tell, the easier it is. We all use a lot of jargon on the ag side. And I will tell you that I had one that, did not get funded many years ago because we were talking about, taking an animal and processing it. And what we said is we were taking the pig to market and sticking a knife into it and killing it and turning it into bacon. And we never said it that clearly. We just used euphemisms like processing and other things. So be sure to say real clear, because the reviewer may be an ag expert, but they may be somebody who does wheat and may not know anything about meat processing. So, try to keep your acronyms to a spare. Run a spell check, have somebody else look back over it to make sure that it makes sense, because nothing irritates a reviewer more than having a thing full of typos and bad grammar within there. And then make sure that your numbers in your budget add up. This is a personal Jim Matson pet peeve. I would tell you that if your numbers don't add up in a budget and I'm a reviewer, I will find other places to take away points in addition to the budget area. Because I figure that results in what is your management capacity and other things with that. What makes it worse? If I can't figure out what you're doing, if you get to page 7 without telling me what your project actually is, I'm going to take grapes, squeeze them, ferment them, and turn them into wine. I'm gonna, grow hemp and turn it into CBD oil. Answer that, answer each question in each section again, even if it does seem a little bit with that, and do a work plan that kind of has a flow that makes sense on things. You're going to do the research, you're going to build up over time what's going to happen. So tell a story even in your work plan and decide, what makes sense on that one. And also the crystal ball rule. Reviewers don't have a crystal ball, or they wouldn't be spending their time reviewing, or they would have used that to buy stock really cheaply during the pandemic and be sitting on a beach drinking a drink with an umbrella or something. So, make sure it's in the application, make sure it's clear that's there, or you won't get the points for it. And once you're done applying, use this application as a template. This is a pain in the butt application. Make sure that you can use it for other funding things. Save your application by all means. That's a lot of times people forget to keep a copy. Keep a paper copy, keep an electronic copy. When it's done, they ask for you what your score is on the application, so you can figure out how you're doing. If it doesn't get funded, you can use that to look at, what your shortcomings are, where are the areas. And also, if you don't win, look at what you can do, what changes you can make, or what other programs that may fit where you're going better. So that was my quick comments with those. Here's a couple places real fast, and Kyle's going to provide a copy of the material. So there's some places to look for where the programs are. the guide for acre, and some of the stuff that we've done on working with people as well from our firm. You know, so figure out what the reviewers are looking for, give it to them as easy as possible, and it doesn't count if it's in the application.
Okay, so next we have Ben and Becca with Woodland Valley Mushrooms, and I've been lucky enough to come across them a little over a year ago, and the work they've done in the past year to get acre grant and then the value added producer grant. We wanted to invite them on just to kind of share a little bit about their experience with applying last year to share, so we get a practical, actual person who's applied to talk to y'all and not us just preaching at you the whole time. So Ben and Becca. You got unmute, man.
Oh, there we go. Hey, Becca, are you unmuted?
I just unmuted.
Hey, all right. It's nice to see everybody, and we really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to know several of you. It's really nice to see Kyle, Jim Matson, Jessica, Jim Johnson, Steve, John. Y'all are an awesome team, and Becca and I have immense value for you as mentors, and it's really nice, and we look forward to continuing long-term relations because awesome people. And yeah, it's a challenge getting through this one, but thankfully through especially Matson Consulting and people like Steve and John and Becca, you can say plenty about how it was great having our teamwork. It really is a team effort here, and it's one point that we definitely wanted to talk about was about how to collaborate well. And Becca, do you want to talk a little bit about what we were mentioning about how to collaborate?
Yeah, for sure. So we used Google Docs at the time. That's what we were using for our collaboration. And it is, you just upload the application, and maybe I'm telling people stuff they already know, but you can just upload the application into Google Docs, and it's really easy to share that with people and get their feedback. So would absolutely recommend that. One hiccup that we came up with Google Docs is that when we went to print it, you can just print from Google Docs, but we discovered that the formatting with Google Docs did not align with our printer, and we spent hours fixing it. I don't even want to guess how many hours, but we spent hours fixing it. So one thing we definitely wanted to advise people is absolutely use Google Docs, had a great experience with it. But definitely prepare yourself to maybe just save it as a Word document and set aside time, just be prepared to have to fix the formatting. Yeah, that was a big one. We now use, we use Microsoft for all of our business stuff. And it does have great collaboration. What?
Microsoft Office.
Yeah, it has great collaboration tools. You do have to pay for it, but it's 1,000% worth it, and you don't have any of those formatting issues. Yeah, that was the big one with Google Docs. Yeah. Did you have anything to add on that, Ben?
Yes, we figured out because of this formatting issue, especially if you're going from Google Docs, where it's awesome to collaborate. If you need to reach out to someone to take a look, it's great. Likewise with Microsoft Office. However, not everyone has that. So we realized with this formatting issue that doing the table of contents last or towards the very end was basically a good idea, because we ended up having things on different pages than they would have otherwise been on. So that was something that we found we would do when we apply again, or will do, is to save the table of contents for last, or have it formatted in Microsoft Word so you have that printable version prepared, and you know what you're looking for, rather than that last minute, oh no, I got 5 more hours to spend on this and I thought I was done, and now I've got myself totally booked up for a week because I've been hammering this thing out nonstop, holding off on everything. It just, just being prepared for that last formatting issue to come up. One other thing that I'll point out that I thought was really insightful, that would be insightful for most, is when it comes to showing funds in your account. From what I understand, from what I experienced, is yes, you need to show funds during the application. I believe it's roughly a month or so. It's there's a certain time period around how soon you have that certification of funds, the date of that certification and the date of the application being submitted. Also, whenever you get recognized if you're an awardee, that when you're signing off to say, okay, I accept this grant, they also ask to show a statement of your bank account, from what I experienced. So having it, you may have to show the funds twice. And maybe that was just me, but something to keep an eye on. And I think that's about it. Is there anything else you can think of, Becca?
Yeah, I made a few notes. I didn't think I had much to say, but I made a few notes. For one, to go ahead and figure out a PDF editor. Those documents that I think Kyle or Jessica showed, that 424, all those different ones, they're PDFs. And it was really stressful for me figuring out, because I just hadn't messed with PDFs much. It was stressful for me trying to figure out how to do that and get the right PDF editor. Yeah, so that was one. And also one thing that was kind of a point of stress was getting the DUNS number and the SAM thing to, like, if you're going to do it, like, go ahead and start that process, because there was just some obstacles for us there, and that was a challenge. Additionally, I would really encourage, if y'all aren't already connected with SCORE, I would 1,000% encourage you to reach out to SCORE. John is actually our SCORE mentor. And I mean, I could go on and on. It has been immensely, immensely helpful for us having that relationship. It's been super supportive. I have a few more notes. One thing I wrote down is to not underestimate the amount of time the table of contents will take you. Ben kind of touched on it, but it was like that last minute thing. We just thought we'd just type it up real fast, and it did not happen that way. Oh, and two last things. One of them is anytime you're discussing something with numbers, go ahead and put it in a table or a chart. It's just easier to digest. It looks more professional. So if you're projecting what your finances are going to look like, or if you're projecting production and you're typing it in a paragraph, go ahead and put that in a table or a chart. And the last thing, what Jim said about working on that beginning of the application with the eligibility and then getting to page 18, where the points matter. Ben and I kind of did that. We were feeling okay about where we were. And then we got to page 18 and kind of freaked out. But yeah, other than that, it is a ton of work, but it was absolutely worth it. And as hard as it was at the end of the process, we truly did decide that whether or not we got money, it was okay, because we learned so much doing it. So yeah, I would just definitely encourage y'all to apply and reach out to all of these people here. As Ben kind of said in the beginning, they were all so supportive and so helpful. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, and Kyle's definitely right. Jim and Jessica have about as much knowledge on my tip of my pinky finger as they do about this grant. So Kyle's definitely right when it comes to that. And everything else said here is absolutely on point. And thank you so much for putting all this information out there. And we look forward to applying again. And this cleared some things up for us. And yeah, good luck.
I saw that there was a question from Allison about what product we applied for. We grow mushrooms. And our value added was local mushrooms. So we applied for fresh local gourmet mushrooms.
And I just,
Go ahead, Jessica.
just to clarify what Ben was saying about the matching funds, he is correct. You do have to show your matching funds. You can't show them any earlier than 30 days before the due date of the application. And then you do have to show access to those funds again once, if you're awarded the grant and when you sign your contract and all of that. So there are two chances where you have to show those.
Thank you, Ben and Becca. Yeah, so I think just from knowing them with the process last year and all, like we've said many, many times, a lot of work goes into it, but it's worth it if you think you have a shot at getting the grant funds. And like they said, you just learn so much putting it down on paper. So again, don't be too intimidated by the process. Think of it as a learning experience. But I know we're at time, but we're going to just be real quick. So Steve, I'll let you talk a little bit about the center we have, and then we'll let V, who again is the most important person for y'all, give a little tidbit from her. And then if there's any questions at the end, we can answer those.
Sure. So I think a lot of people are probably wondering what kind of assistance might be available for the grant. Clemson and everybody you've heard talk today pretty much has received a grant themselves to help with some of these things, especially if it's multiple producers or cooperatives, things like that. But just want to let you know that there is some assistance available. Right, I've got on the screen here the slide. There's a website you can go to, and maybe you can fill out the request for assistance form on the technical assistance page. That'll help us get you in line, get in the queue. One thing for sure, if you think you want to go for this and you think you need some help, I would say there's two main things, or maybe three. One would be make sure you're eligible, and V. Gartman was a perfect person to talk to about that. Of course, Jim Matz and Jessica are also very good at that. The second was what John Carmen said. If you have a business plan, or at least your information together, basically you'll see you're slotting the information from your business plan right into the grant application. So if you have that already, that's great too. And the third thing is, if you do need help, I would say approach us at least a month ahead of time. When people approach us a week before, we try to help, but often what happens is we just can't get it together, and it's a lot of wasted effort. I think you'll find what just Ben and Rebecca mentioned, there's a lot of detail in the paperwork. You have to attach all sorts of things that you wouldn't believe. And it's the size of a phone book when you finally submit it. And I think we'll probably have to submit through grants.gov, which is even worse than submitting it in paper. So, that's all I have for the tips. But certainly reach out to anybody on the slide. I saw a slide that came up with everybody's contact information. There it is.
Yeah, and again, I'll be sharing this with everybody, so don't worry about frantically writing all this down. So you will get this probably in an email tomorrow once the video converts too. So, okay, V, well, we'll let you kind of close it out. Anything you want to say, and then again, if anyone does have any questions, we can do that too. You muted, V. You got to unmute.
We need to close the slideshow down.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, great. So I would like to encourage everyone to pay attention to their expenses, the budget portion of the application. Please make sure that you have only eligible expenses. If you are not sure about the expense, if it's eligible or not, please contact me. And the reason for that if you have more than 10% of ineligible expenses, they might reject your application. Also, I will be more than happy to work with you and review your application. You don't have to finish the whole application. If you only finish one section, please email to me, and I will be able to review and kind of guide you through the process. I would encourage everyone to mail the hard copy to my office in Walterboro or email to me. Please, if possible, do not submit your application on grants.gov. Those are due on March 16th, which it means you will have less time. And also the process is kind of quite difficult and confusing. So please email them to me or just mail the hard copy to Walterboro office. And again, one more thing. Last year, I was able to meet with my clients. This year, due to the COVID, my boss kind of, discouraged me from meeting one-on-one with you. So you're very welcome to call my cell phone. You are welcome to call my office number or just email me. I will be available from 8 until 5, 6, 7 p.m. whenever you need me. And hopefully I can help you, many of you.
Thank you, V. Yeah, and y'all, I just cannot recommend enough all these folks that have talked on here today. So like we said, reach out. Again, I'll be supplying you with everything contact-wise, but we just highly recommend if you are interested in applying to use these resources you have available because we're here to help. We want to help V get as many applications and grants into South Carolina as we can. So I know we're over time, but if anybody does have a question, you can, I have everybody muted, but put it in the chat or raise your hand and then, or you can unmute yourself, I guess. I don't know since I have everybody muted. Does anyone have, and we might have answered everything because that's how good we are at giving presentations. Okay, well, if no one has questions, and like I said, I'll be providing you with all the contacts so you can obviously contact these folks individually with any questions you have. But again, we look forward to helping folks going forward. And like I said, hopefully we can get as many value-added grants to South Carolina as we can.
Kyle, I have one question. Do you have the application toolkits?
Yes, so I'm going to say that once the video converts, all that, which takes a while. So I'm guessing y'all, everyone will email tomorrow or either first thing next week with all of that. So you'll get the presentation, the toolkit, additional PowerPoints from SCORE. You'll receive, again, a link to the video. So you'll have all that information in one spot along with all the contact information. So you'll be getting that, like I said, either tomorrow or early next week. So be on the lookout for that.
And also because I heard that some clients had hard time to fill out PDF forms, you're very welcome to print them and do the handwriting, sign the form, and we will accept those as well. You don't have to, fill them out, and because they could be very hard.
That's very true. I've learned my lesson on that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yes, well, everybody, thank you. We're so glad that you were able to join us today. And we do, like I said, look forward to helping y'all going forward. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks for putting up with us, folks.